The Rothschilds. Does the wealthiest family in history really run the world? Introduction. The Rothschilds, one of the wealthiest families in the history of mankind, and also one of the most mysterious. No one really knows how much wealth they currently possess, with a vast gap in the estimates of different sources. While some claim that the Rothschilds' net worth is about $400 billion, others speculate to be in the trillions. Information about them is always contradicting and things just don't add up. For instance, some sources describe the Rothschilds as the wealthiest family in history. But when you look at the same source's list of wealthiest families in history, you won't find a trace of the Rothschilds. To give you an idea of how hard it actually is to find the truth about them, an author once planned to write a book entitled Lies About the Rothschilds, but she abandoned it, saying it was relatively easy to spot the lies, but it proved impossible to find out the truth. In fact, much of the information about them has been edited or removed from the internet, with platforms claiming it's inaccurate or misleading. In this video, we're going to explore how the Rothschilds rose to power and display some very interesting facts about them. Stay tuned to know how they were primarily responsible for the creation of two countries, and to learn some of the most shocking conspiracies about the secretive family. Rise to power. Humble beginnings. It all began in medieval Europe, with the increasing influence of the church on rulers and the vast majority of the population being Christians. Being a non-Christian, especially a Jew, was quite difficult. There were many discriminations against Jews, and in Frankfurt, Germany, they were all confined to a narrow alley in the outskirts of the city and were scarcely allowed to leave. Back then, houses were distinguished by symbols rather than numbers, and one of those symbols was a red shield, or in German old spelling, a Rothschild, the name which the family became known with since the 16th century. Although being a Jew at the time was harsh in many aspects, it presented a rare advantage. Since Christians were forbidden from lending money with interest, this left the lucrative field of finance, especially loans, to the Jews. And the Rothschilds were one of the families to pick the trade up and exploit it. Launch of the Dynasty. The Rothschild banking dynasty began in the 18th century on the hand of Mayer Amschel Rothschild, often titled the founding father of international finance. Mayer inherited his father's trade of exchanging currencies and became a dealer in rare coins. He quickly rose in ranks until he became closely tied with European royalty and was regarded as a prominent banker and expert on foreign trade. After acquiring the needed knowledge, Mayer opened a banking business in his native Frankfurt and soon assigned his 5 sons, Jacob, Nathan, Solomon, Kalman, and Amschel, to expand their business to 5 cities across Europe: Paris, London, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt. This unprecedented system of international banking built the family's vast wealth, protected it from local violence, and kept it well away from the hands of greedy monarchs. And since all control of the banks was always in family hands, they were able to maintain full secrecy about the true size of their fortunes. Peak. The 19th century witnessed the peak of the Rothschilds' achievements. They never let an opportunity pass without seizing it, and the first one was the Napoleonic Wars. During the war, they lent the British government the equivalent of $10 billion. Although it supported the military cause, this brought about a collapse of the economy due to sudden inflation of national debt. Nathan Mayer Rothschild calculated that the prices of government bonds will increase after 2 years of stabilization. So, he immediately bought the entire government bond market. Then he waited 2 years and sold the bonds at a short peak of prices for a 40% profit in what's now being called the most audacious business stunt in history. Issuing bonds for government loans kept his London bank in thriving business, and in 1825 he was able to supply enough coin to the Bank of England to prevent a liquidity crisis. Creation of Israel and Brazil. This financial support gave the Rothschilds major influence over the British government that kept mounting until it eventually, along with a European wave of Zionism, led to the famous Balfour Declaration, which ultimately led to the establishment of the Nation of Israel on Palestinian land. The declaration's addressee was Lord Walter Rothschild, a prominent Zionist leader and the second Baron Rothschild. This was followed by the family's donation of tens of millions of dollars to establish a Jewish Commonwealth. They were also directly responsible for the independence of Brazil from Portugal in the 19th century. The government of the newly founded Brazilian Empire needed to pay £2 million to Portugal in order to approve its independence. And the Rothschilds were first to act. They rose the capital from their London bank and lent it to the Brazilian government with a 50% interest. Government aid. In addition, Nathan Rothschild and J.P. Morgan supplied the U.S. government with enough gold to prevent a default, an encounter that was the beginning of the Rothschild influence over the United States, and a controversial relationship between them and the legendary financier J.P. Morgan. They were also the primary supporters and profiteers of the American Federal Reserve Bank, along with wealthy families like the Morgans, the Rockefellers, and the Carnegies. Moreover, the equivalent of $1 billion was issued in war bonds by the Rothschilds Bank in London for the Japanese government during the Russo-Japanese War, another lucrative event for the family. Private investments. Their business wasn't limited to banking and loans. They also invested huge sums in the monopoly of Europe's railway system, controlled Rio Tinto, one of the largest mining companies in the world, and had a share in Egypt's massive Suez Canal. They owned a huge portion of the world's gold and made a lot of their wealth trading it. A group used to meet in their London office to decide the international price of gold every day, until as recently as 2004, after which the prices of gold were left to be decided by supply and demand. They also made profit from winemaking, owning some of the largest vineyards in the world, and controlling the most known French wine brand names. They're the largest shareholders of the De Beers monopoly of diamond mining in South Africa, which owns and operates all 7 diamond mines in the country. And they made tons of money in real estate assets. Royal titles and extended power. The Rothschilds' fame wasn't only due to their enormous wealth. They also did favors for European governments in exchange for royal titles. Meyer's 5 sons were made barons of the Austrian Empire, and a Rothschild was the first Jew to enter the British Parliament. Their power grew to such proportions that the Prime Minister once claimed that Nathan Rothschild was the most powerful man in Britain, admitting that he himself had no more power than Lord Rothschild. And Nathan once referred to the King of England as a puppet, saying that if he's given control of credit of a nation, it's irrelevant who makes the laws. At about the same time in the Vatican, observers were shocked that Karl von Rothschild was not required to kiss the Pope's feet, a mandatory tradition that was exercised even by monarchs. Decline. All of this made the Rothschild name synonymous with extravagant wealth and power. They owned the largest known collection of art in history and some of the vastest, most luxurious mansions on the planet. However, they received some serious blows in the 20th century. France's socialist government nationalized all their properties, and their share in the Suez Canal was also taken by the Egyptian government in a wave of nationalization of private companies. And of course, the rise of Nazis and explosion of anti-Semitism led by Adolf Hitler forced them to flee Germany and Austria, and most of their properties and art collections were seized. This was in addition to the fact that there were no male heirs to inherit the Rothschild business, especially when Amschel Rothschild hanged himself only a few hours after he was made responsible for the London bank in a merger meeting. His unseeming suicide aroused many questions. Conspiracy. The Rothschilds has since maintained a low public profile moving into the 21st century, and not much about their current state of affairs is known. Official sources claim that the Rothschild wealth has declined, and that there are many major companies in the world making much more money. But upon further inspection, this just doesn't make sense. For instance, the net worth of any given individual Rothschild might not be much, but a company which owns billions of dollars in assets is owned by a bigger company that is under the umbrella of a mother company, which is ultimately owned by a Rothschild. That's not to mention the vast amounts of money circulated in their private banking business. When you try to research about the Rothschilds, you'll almost always find that all the terminology is vague. Anything they own is an international business. Anything they earn is just a large sum. There's never a traceable hierarchy. There's never an accurate number. This paved the way to the rise of innumerable conspiracies about the family. While there's not enough evidence to confirm any of the theories, some of them are worth exploring. Conspiracy theories. Some people claim that the Rothschilds are responsible for all the wars since the 18th century. They trigger them via inducing political conflict, or even assassinating key figures, which ignites the war. Although they may be the primary beneficiaries from wars, since much of their fortune is made by government loans with high interest during times of war and economic collapse, there's no tangible evidence they have caused any of them. Some others claim that their close ties to J.P. Morgan is responsible for the deliberate sinking of the Titanic. On board the Titanic's maiden voyage was some of the wealthiest men in the world, many of whom opposed the establishment of the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States, an ambition of J.P. Morgan and possibly the Rothschilds. It is said that White Star Line, the company that operated the Titanic, is owned by J.P. Morgan, deliberately sank the ship to collect a huge insurance and rid Morgan of his opposition. Again, no tangible evidence is to be found, but it might be worth to mention that J.P. Morgan himself was planning to be on the Titanic and had reserved a royal suite on board, but made a last-minute cancellation and stayed in a hotel, suggesting that he knew its doomed fate. Some even claim that the Rothschilds conduct rituals of Satanism and are leaders of secret societies that rule the world from behind the curtains. This is possibly based on their neo-Gothic architecture and secret parties, which were observed to have bizarre costumes and rituals, and the invitations to which were written backwards. Spooky indeed. Gasoline is poured on the flames of conspiracy whenever a notable figure makes a daring claim about the Rothschilds, like many newspaper articles or letters between politicians, which ignite the doubts of speculators. For instance, President of the United States Andrew Jackson once said in his Congress speech about national debt, "You are a den of vipers and thieves. I intend to rout you out, and by the eternal God, I will rout you out. If the people only understood the rank injustice of our money and banking system, there would be a revolution before morning." Conclusion. So, is any of this true? Do the Rothschilds really control all the money in the world? The truth is, we don't really know. They may. They probably don't. But the lack of proper documentation of their business, their shady practices, and the almost desperate attempts of media to conceal facts about them make it very suspicious. Maybe they're just an ordinary family that enjoys watching the world make a fuss about them while they laugh on their diamond-inlaid couch. Or maybe they have an evil scheme and are in control of the fate of the world. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.